What if every gym leader had a full Pokemon team? Well, in this video, I'm going to go over just that. But instead of giving them strong, balanced teams, I'm going to keep them at their respective power level. And also, this video is sponsored by Raid, but we'll get into that in a bit. Let's do this. Alright, starting with the Kanto gym leaders, I think Brock's full team as the first gym leader would be Onix, Geodude, Ammonite, Kabuto, Zubat, and another Geodude. I picked Ammonite and Kabuto because Brock is right next to Mount Moon, so it would make sense for him to come across a few fossils while training. Zubat because, well, Mount Moon is also known for having a lot of Zubats, and he has one in the anime. And finally, Geodude to make his team not as diverse as the first gym leader. For Misty, I think she would have a Staryu, Starmie, Psyduck, a Magikarp, Goldeen, and a Horsey. I chose Psyduck for obvious reasons because it's basically her signature Pokemon in the anime. Magikarp for more of a joke slot since she is the second gym leader, but this could also be the Gyarados that she eventually has in her Let's Go rematch team and in the anime. And lastly, Goldeen and Horsey, mainly because the Cerulean Gym is going to have a ton of fish Pokemon inside of it, so these two would fit right in. For Lieutenant Surge, I think you would have a Voltorb, Pikachu, Raichu, Jolteon, Magnemite, and another Voltorb. I chose Jolteon because in the original games, Lieutenant Surge is known as the Lightning American, which would mean that he's probably from the Unova region. And if you watched my Pokemon not native to their region video, I stated that Eevee is most likely from the Unova region. So I thought it would make sense for Lieutenant Surge to have a native Unovian Pokemon on his team. And Jolteon came to mind as a perfect fit. For Magnemite, it could have been possible for Lieutenant Surge to find one in Verbank Complex in Unova or simply in Kanto, and a second Voltorb because, well, he is a soldier, and in the manga, Voltorbs are used as grenades, so having a pair of grenades felt just right for Lieutenant Surge. For Erica, I think she would have a Victory Bell, Tangela, Vileplume, Ivysaur, Gloom, and a Weeping Bell. I chose Ivysaur because Erica is a student of the art of flower arranging, so it makes sense for her to have a Pokemon with a blooming flower. Gloom because she eventually gets a Blossom in Gold and Silver, but more because it's also a flower, a smelly flower. And finally, Weeping Bell because she has one in the anime, but more importantly in Pokemon Puzzle League, and I just love his cry in those games. For Koga, I think he would have two Coughing, Muck, Wheezing, Golbat, and a Venomoth. Golbat because it's Koga's ace in the manga, and he has it on his team in the anime. And what better to have a poisonous bat on your side as a stealthy ninja like Koga? And Venomoth because it makes absolutely no sense for Sabrina to have one, and I'll explain why. When you think about it, Koga and Sabrina's gym badges make more sense when they're swapped with each other, because the Marsh badge, something based on a wetland that probably has poisonous creatures, would make more sense to be given by a poison type specialist, and vice versa for the Soul badge being given by a psychic type specialist. So possibly in the development of Red and Green, Koga and Sabrina might have swapped gyms, but Game Freak decided to leave Venomoth with Sabrina for some odd reason. And since Venomoth is one of Koga's aces in the anime, it seems like it should have been on his original team in the games, so that's why I picked it. Moving on to Sabrina now, I think she would have Kadabra, Mr. Mime, Alakazam, her random Venomoth, Hypno, and Abra. Hypno because in the original games, this was a common Pokemon used by Team Rocket. And since Sabrina has Team Rocket roots in the manga, I think this would suit her well. And lastly, Abra to simply complete the Alakazam line. But to give a more sinister reason, maybe this Abra was a boy Sabrina turned into a Pokemon, since Kadabra has a dex statue that states that it was once a human before it transformed. For Blaine, I think we'd have a Growlithe, Ponyta, Rapidash, Arcanine, Magmar, and a Ninetales. Magmar because it's essentially his ace in the anime, and became iconic because of the Charizard battle. And Ninetales because, simply, it's an iconic Fire-type Pokemon, and also it's on Blaine's team in the anime as well. And finally for the Kanto region, we have Giovanni, and I think along with his regular team, his sixth Pokemon would be Mewtwo. And I think this could work in this era of Pokemon games, since these are the first ones. And on top of that, it would make receiving your final gym badge and taking out Team Rocket feel more satisfying. But if you don't agree, then simply I think you could have his Persian for his last Pokemon, since it is synonymous with Giovanni. And before we move on to the Johto region, this video is sponsored by Raid. Raid Shadow Legends, the greatest raid game with legends. Over 700 of them. And don't forget about the Shadow in Raid Shadow Legends. And the epic RPG battle system, incredible graphics, and intense PvE and PvP content. Like, look at me, I'm literally raiding with legends in the shadows in Raid Shadow Legends. Did you even read the talking points, Mini Dobbs? Of course I have, because how would I know that Raid Shadow Legends are celebrating their 4th anniversary? So we're going to pick our 4 favorite champions. Take it away, Dobbs. No. Fine, I'll just do it all by myself then. We have Cecilia Flametongue from Demon Spawn, Elinarl from the High Elves, Astrolon from the Sacred Order, and Cecilian the Lucky from the Banner Lords. That's literally what you picked last time. Well, they're still my favorite. And right now, Raid is doing a Dragon Egg Hunt. New players can download the game and enter their in-game player ID on egghunt.plarium.com for a chance to win several prizes, including Amazon gift cards. And existing players can earn a small in-game gift as well. So download Raid today using the link down below in the description or the QR code above and get a free starter pack and become a Raid Shadow Legend like me. And now back to the video. Next up, we have the Johto region, and starting with Faulkner, I think his full team would be Pidgey, Pidgeotto, 2 Hootoo, Doduo, and another Pidgey. I chose Hootoo because it's pretty strange that a lot of the Johto gym leaders don't have Johto Pokemon, so giving Faulkner a few Hootoo would make the most sense. And Doduo, simply because he's the Dodrio that went undefeated, well, before he faced Ash in the anime. And also the fact that there's a Japanese card of Faulkner's Dodrio, so it seems to be a pretty iconic Pokemon for him. For Bugsy, I think we'd have a Metapod, Kakuna, Scyther, Spinarak, Ladybug, and a Pineco. I chose Spinarak because in the remakes, his gym has a huge spiderweb puzzle, so it would make sense for him to have a Spinarak, like he does in the anime. Ladybug because it can be found in the routes just before Azalea Town, and also because it's incredibly weak, just like Bugsy. And Pineco because Azalea Town is right next to Elix Forest, so I'm sure Bugsy has explored the area, headbutting a few trees for his research. For Whitney, I think she would have a Clefairy, Miltank, Apom, Jigglypuff, Lickitung, and a Ditto. I chose Apom simply because there's official art from Gold and Silver depicting Whitney playing baseball with an Apom. Jigglypuff because this would match her appreciation for cute pink Pokemon. Lickitung because it's yet another pink normal type Pokemon that would match her theme. And Ditto, not only because it's a cute pink Pokemon, but also it would make her gym even more annoying. So on top of having to deal with her Metronome and Clefairy, the player would have to face a Ditto copying one of their Pokemon as well. For Morty, I think we'd have a Ghastly, 2 Haunter, Gengar, and 2 Mischievous. And I chose Mischievous because it's quite literally the only Ghost-type Johto Pokemon. So Morty as a Johto gym leader should definitely have at least a couple of them. And it would also mean that he would own all of the Ghost-type Pokemon between the Kanto and Johto regions, since he already has a full Gengar line. For Chuck, I think we'd have a Primeape, Poliwrath, Hitmonchan, Machoke, and 2 Tyrogue. I chose Hitmonchan because Chuck is known for his punchy skills, so Hitmonchan would make a great sparring partner. Machoke for the same reason as Hitmonchan, but also because in the anime, Chuck has a close friendship with Machoke, and are often seen crying and hugging each other when they're happy. And lastly, the 2 Tyrogue, because in the manga, he owns 2 Tyrogue that help his wife around the house. And they can be his pupils for training, eventually becoming a Hitmonlee and Hitmontop to complete the Hitmon trio. For Jasmine, I think she would have 2 Magnemite, Steelix, Skarmory, Rhydon, and an Ampharos. I chose Skarmory because Jasmine often travels to the Kanto region to train in the fighting dojo in Saffron City, so it would make sense for her to have a flying type Pokemon to make it easier for her to travel. And Skarmory as an iconic steel type Pokemon would fit well with her team. Rhydon because originally Jasmine was a rock type specialist, so it would make sense for her to have one of her leftover rock type Pokemon on her team. And finally Ampharos because of her close friendship with Amphi at the top of the Olivine Lighthouse. For price, I think you would have a Seal, Dugong, Piloswine, Sneasel, Lapras, and a Delibird. I chose Sneasel because Mahogany Town is known as the town of the ninja, and Sneasel seems to be the most ninja-like ice-type Pokemon in these games. Lapras because Mahogany Town is right next to Lake of Rage, and having a Pokemon to ferry you around in that area would be useful. And lastly, Delibird because in the manga, this is Price's ace, and it was so strong in the manga that it single-handedly defeated Ho-Oh on its own, even at a type and legendary status disadvantage. So it would be funny to see this as Price's ace in the games too. And finally for the Johto region, we have Claire, and I think her team would be 3 Dragonair, Kingdra, Dragonite, and a Charizard. I chose Dragonite because as the 8th gym leader and Lance's cousin and rival, she should definitely have a Dragonite of her own. And lastly Charizard because her gym is based in a sweltering hot volcano, so Charizard would be at home here. Next up, we have the Hoenn region, and starting with Roxanne, I think your full team would be Geodude, Nosepass, Lileep, Anorith, Aaron, and another Geodude. I chose Lileep and Anorith because in the postgame of the remakes, Roxanne is seen begging a Fossil Maniac for a fossil, even nearly offering a stone badge in exchange. And on top of that, Roxanne is a fossil expert and has a fossil museum in front of her gym, so having 2 fossil Pokemon suits her well. Aaron simply because it's a good Hoenn rep for a rock type specialist, and Geodude because these Pokemon are literally everywhere in the Hoenn caves, and she already has a second one in Pokemon Emerald. For Brawly, I think you would have a Machop, Makuhita, Meditite, Tyrogue, Ammonite, and another Machop. I chose Meditite because Brawly is canonically known to be a deep thinker, so fighting Psychic type Pokemon like Meditite would be a perfect fit. Tyrogue because it would fit Brawly's flexible battling style, and Ammonite because in the first version of the remakes, Brawly actually makes a Twitch-Plays Pokemon reference, stating that he stared at a Helix fossil for 4 whole days and discovered his true power, so I thought it would be fun for him to have one. For Watson, I think we'd have a Magnemite, Voltorb, Magneton, Manectric, Plusle, and a Minun. Manectric because it actually becomes Watson's ace in Pokemon Emerald, and also he should have a Hoenn rep on his team. And Plusle and Minun because both these Pokemon can be found in Watson's apartment in the remakes, so I figured these 2 either belong to him or his wife. For Flannery, I think she would have 2 Slugma, Torkoal, Camerupt, Vulpix, and a Nubble. I chose Camerupt because Lavras Town is located right next to a volcano, and Camerupt is known as the Eruption Pokemon. Vulpix because Flannery is known for her strength and her beauty, so Vulpix eventually becoming a Ninetales could represent this aspect well. And Numble because it can be found in the surrounding area, and it's another Hoenn Pokemon. For Norman, I think he would have 2 Slaking, Vigoroth, Linoone, Miltank, and a Spinda. I chose Linoone because this could be the Zigzagoon that Norman lent to Wally to catch his first Pokemon. Miltank because Norman and his family are originally from Olivine City in the Johto region, and Olivine City is just south of a Miltank farm, so I thought him having a normal type Johto rep would be fitting. And Spinda because he uses one as a lead in Pokemon Emerald, and it has moves like Teeter Dance and Encore that can offset his Slaking Truant abilities. For Winona, I think she would have a Swellow, Plepper, Skarmory, Altaria, Tropius, and a shiny Swellow. I chose Tropius because Fort Tree City is really based on top of trees. It's almost like Tropius was made just for Fort Tree City, so I'm surprised Winona didn't have one in Ruby and Sapphire, while it should have been her ace. And shiny Swellow because in the anime, Winona is the only gym leader to have a shiny Pokemon, so why not have her as the only gym leader in the games to have one as well? For Liza and Tate, I think they would have a Solrock, Lunatone, Claydol, Xatu, Matang, and a Chimecho. I chose Claydol and Xatu simply because they have these 2 Pokemon in their teams in Pokemon Emerald. Matang because Moss Deep City is Stevenstone's hometown, so it wouldn't surprise me if he gave away a Beldum to Liza and Tate like he did with the player. And Chimecho because it just seems like a Pokemon 2 children would love to have, and even his color scheme matched their original outfits, so it seems like a good fit. For Wallace, along with his full team, I think we'd have a Gorebyss, since he is a master rank in Pokemon contests, and a Pokemon like Gorebyss would excel in that field. And lastly, for the Hoenn region, we have Hoenn, and along with his full team, I think we have a Vaporeon, since Hoenn is also deeply involved in Pokemon contests too, so much so that he's actually a contest coordinator, so we should definitely have at least one Pokemon known for his beauty. Next up, we have the Sinnoh region, and starting with Roark, I think his full team would be Geodude, Onix, Cranidos, Shieldon, Nosepass, and another Geodude. I chose Shieldon because Roark is a miner, and it's likely he finds fossils all the time, and Nosepass because it is the compass Pokemon, so it would help Roark navigate when he's mining. For Gardenia, I think she would have a Cherubi, Turtwig, Roserade, Burmy, Carnivine, and a Cacnea. I chose Burmy because it can be found in honey trees surrounding Eterna City. Carnivine because in the anime, Gardenia really wanted one, and even offered trading several strong Pokemon for James's. And Cacnea because also in the anime, James lets his Cacnea with Gardenia to be trained, so it could be a little Easter egg that connects the games and the anime. For Maline, I think she would have a Meditite, Machoke, Lucario, Croagunk, Tyrogue, and a Happiny. I chose Croagunk because Maline is friends with Crasher Wake, and as a type of father figure, Wake could have given Maline a Croagunk, since it is the mascot of his hometown. Tyrogue because it could eventually become the Hitmontop that Maline has on her Platinum team. And Happiny because Maline is known to be a cute little girl, but is also respected all throughout Valstone for her strength. And Happiny can be viewed in the same way, since in the anime it has superhuman strength. For Crasher Wake, I think we would have a Gyarados, Quagsire, Floatzel, Bibarel, Wishcash, and a Poliwhirl. I chose Bibarel because it can be found in the Great Marsh, and would be a nice bulky water-type Pokemon for Wake's team. Wishcash simply because it has a W on his forehead, which could stand for Crasher Wake, and since Wake is a pro wrestler, this would be a very Crasher Wake thing for him to do. And Poliwhirl, due to Wake's close friendship with Maline, since it would make sense for him to have a Pokemon that can spar with her fighting types. For Fantina, I think she would have a Drifbloom, Gengar, Mismagius, Sableye, Frostlass, and a Spiritomb. I chose Sableye because Fantina is a model, and is likely from the Kalos region, so it wouldn't surprise me her hanging out in Reflection Cave watching herself strike a pose, and coming across a Sableye while practicing. Frostlass because it is known to lure people into his caves, and Fantina is known as the alluring soulful dancer, so these 2 Pokemon would make a good pair, especially in Pokemon contests. And Spiritomb to fill in the other half of Fantina's alluring soulful dancer motto. For Byron, I think he would have a Bronzor, Steelix, Bastiodon, a fossil Pokemon, Probopass, and a Lucario. I chose a fossil Pokemon because Byron has a hobby of digging fossils on Iron Island, so I feel like he should have at least one more fossil Pokemon on his team, but as for which one, it is really up in the air. Probopass because it would be poetic for Byron to have a Probopass while his son Roark has a Nosepass. And Lucario because Byron is shown living on Iron Island in a small cabin, so it would make sense for him to come across a Railu egg or Lucario, like Riley did with the player. For Candace, I think she would have a Snover, Sneasel, Medicham, a Abomasnow, Mamoswine, and a Frostlass. I chose Mamoswine because it would be a useful Pokemon to have to traverse the snowy routes around the area. And Frostlass because Candace mentions that she wants to learn more about Maline's fighting type Pokemon, so it would make sense for her to find an ice type that can counter fighting types, and also simply because it's her ace in Platinum. And finally for the Sinnoh region, we have Volkner. And for his full team, I think he would have a Raichu, Ambipom, Artillery, Luxray, Electivire, and a Rotom. I chose Electivire because Volkner and Flint are really good friends, and it would be the counterpart of Flint's Magmortar. And Rotom because Volkner is an electrician who likes to experiment with machines, so giving him an electric type Pokemon that can possess these machines would be perfect. Next, we have the Unova region. It started with Silent, Chili, and Cress. I think their full teams would have a Lillipup, an Elemental Monkey, a Patrat, a Pokemon that's called weak to their type weakness, a starter Pokemon, and a weak Pokemon of their specialty typing. I chose Patrat simply because it's a basic normal type Pokemon to pair with their Lillipup. A quad weak Pokemon, which would be Ferrocy, Numel, and Tirtuga, since it would be easy to take down with the gifted Elemental Monkey. A starter Pokemon to possibly represent that the three brothers all started their journeys together, and a weak Pokemon of their specialty typing, which will be Patillo, Darumaka, and Temple, since they are the first gym leaders. For Charon, I think he would have a Patrat, Lillipup, Machino, Castform, Deerling, and a Clefairy. I chose Machino because it is known to be a clean freak, and Charon as a school teacher could use a Pokemon to clean up his classroom. For Castform, it would be a great Pokemon to demonstrate to Charon students the effects of the weather, and it is also shown in the trading card. For Deerling, just like Castform, it would be another great Pokemon to teach children about seasonal forms. And Clefairy, simply because of the Pokemon Stadium 2 minigame of Clefairy teaching a class, and I thought it would be a funny throwback for Charon to have one. For Lenora, I think she would have a Herdeer, Watchog, Audino, Archon, Tirtuga, and a Boldore. I chose Audino because it can be found just outside of Dacrian City in the Pinwheel Forest, and also for the fact that they are XP farms, so it would help the player level up faster. Archon and Tirtuga because Lenora is an archaeologist, and I think it would make a lot more sense for her to be a rock type specialist rather than a normal type, especially since her gym is literally inside a museum full of rocks, so naturally she would have both of the Unova fossil Pokemon. And Boldore to give her another rock type Pokemon so that her team is half rock and half normal. For Roxy, I think she would have a Coughing, Whirlipede, Grimer, Trubbish, Golbat, and a Loudred. I chose Grimer because Roxy is literally standing in a pile of purple goo, and one has to wonder where that pile of purple goo came from. Trubbish because Roxy's gym is an underground music club, so it would be expected for a lot of trash to accumulate and possibly turn into a Trubbish. Golbat because of its expression, it fits the screamo rock band vibe Roxy is going for. And Loudred simply because it's a living speaker, and what is a musician without a loud speaker? For Berg, I think he would have a Whirlipede, Dwebble, Leovani, Beautifly, Joltik, and a Smeargle. I chose Beautifly because Berg is an artist, so it would be expected of him to have a colorful Pokemon like Beautifly. And he also has a butterfly belt buckle, so it makes sense. Joltik because his gym in the sequels is a silky web maze, so a spider Pokemon like Joltik would thrive in this environment. And Smeargle because Berg is a painter, and what is a painter in the Pokemon world without a Smeargle? And to make up for being a normal type, it could have sketch moves that are bug type, so it would fit in well. For Alessa, I think she would have two Emolga, Zypstrika, Tynamo, Flaffy, and Galvantula. Tynamo because in the anime, Alessa uses one as her ace, and it's surprisingly powerful. She even calls it the Electric Queen. Flaffy because it's another Pokemon that can take advantage of Alessa's signature move, Volt Switch. And Galvantula because as a fashionista, Alessa could use a silk to make herself trendy clothing. For Clay, I think you would have a Krokorok, Palpitoad, Excadrill, Golett, Gigalith, and a Remoraid. Golett because Clay's mining business could have uncovered this ancient automaton Pokemon. Gigalith because I'm sure Clay's mining business comes across a ton of Rock'n'Rolla and Boldore, and since Gigalith has Sandstream, it would be beneficial for Clay's rock-type Pokemon. And Remoraid simply because it was originally based on a revolver, and since Clay is basically a cowboy, it would fit his aesthetic. And it wouldn't be weird since he already has a water-type Pokemon on his team anyway. For Skyla, I think she would have a Swoobat, Unfazon, Swanna, Bravery, Swellow, and a Sigilyph. Bravery because Skyla is a cargo pilot, and according to Bravery's Dexit tree, it can literally lift a car. So this would be a good cargo lifting Pokemon for her to have. Swellow because up until this generation, it was the fastest bird Pokemon, so it could keep up with Skyla's plane. And Sigilyph because in the Japanese version, Skyla's gym leader title is the Heavens High Flying Girl. So Sigilyph's biblically accurate angel look would represent this title well. For Bryson, I think he would have a Vanillish, Crygogonal, Beartic, Manabuzz, Bisharp, and a Zoroark. I chose Manabuzz, Bisharp, and Zoroark because Bryson already has all the Ice-type Pokemon in Unova, excluding Kyurem. And while we could give him duplicates or older Ice-type Pokemon, I thought it would be more fun to give him Dark-type Pokemon to represent his evil character at Pokestar Studios. And Manabuzz, Bisharp, and Zoroark fit perfectly for Bryson Man. For Drayden and Iris, I think their full teams would be Fraxure, Druddigon, Haxorus, Zweilous, Gabite, and Flygon. I chose Zweilous to represent that the gym has two leaders, because it's basically a two-headed dragon-type gym. Gabite because the main difference between Iris and Drayden's Pokemon teams is that they're all male or female. And since Gabite has gender differences, it could represent this aspect well. And Flygon because Drayden has a Flygon on his team in the sequels, and they can be found in the expanded Unova Dex. And finally for the Unova region, we have Marlin, and I think his full team would be Caracosta, Wailord, Jellicent, Mantine, Basculin, and Alomomola. I chose Mantine because, according to a random TV show in Unova, Marlin learned how to dive by practicing with a Mantine as a child, so maybe this is a Pokemon that he has had for a long time. Basculin because these Pokemon are literally everywhere in the Unova region, and I mean everywhere. And Marlin as a fisherman has probably encountered thousands of these fish. And lastly, Alomomola, since it matches Marlin's laid-back personality. Next up, we have the Kalos region, and starting with Viola, I think your full team would be Surskit, Vivillon, Spinarak, Caterpie, Metapod, and a Burmy. I chose Spinarak because Viola's whole gym is a giant spider web, so it would make sense for it to have at least one spider Pokemon. Caterpie because Sandalwood Forest is notorious for having an abundance of them. Metapod because Viola is a photographer, and she happens to have pictures of Metapod and Butterfree in the entrance of her gym, so maybe she took pictures of her own Pokemon. And Burmy because it can be found in the route just before Sandalwood City. For Grant, I think you would have an Amora, Tyrant, Onix, Dwebble, Binacle, and a Rhyhorn. I chose Onix because in the anime, Grant uses one against Ash in his gym battle, and it practically becomes his main Pokemon for future battles in the series. For Dwebble and Binacle, these Pokemon can be found by smashing rocks outside of Grant's gym in Silage City. And Rhyhorn because 2 routes down, there's a mountain path that requires a player to ride a Rhyhorn to get through. And since Grant is a rock climber, it would make sense for him to have one of these Pokemon to get to where he needs to be. For Karina, I think she would have a Mienfoo, Machoke, Hawlucha, 2 Lucario, and a Pancham. I chose Lucario because in the game, she already has 2 Lucario, so it would make sense for her to battle with one before giving one away to the player. And Pancham, simply because it's a cute fighting type Pokemon that Karina could have. For Ramos, I think you would have a Jumpluff, Weepinbell, Go-Go, Sunflora, Execute, and a Cacturn. I chose Sunflora because in the anime, Ramos already owns a ton of them, and he uses their solar beam attacks to generate electricity, so maybe he brings one on the team every now and then. Execute because it can be caught in the route just before Coumarine City, and there is also a debate whether they're actually seed Pokemon and not eggs, which would tie in with Ramos being a gardener. And Cacturn because it could act as a scarecrow for Ramos's garden. For Clement, I think you would have an Emolga, Magneton, Heliolisk, Magnemite, Rotom, and a Luxray. I chose Magnemite because there are several Magnemite in Lumio City, and Clement loves to tinker with robotic stuff. Rotom because Clement is also a boy genius, and it could help him build machines by possessing them. And Luxray because in the anime, it eventually becomes Clement's main Pokemon. For Valerie, I think she would have a Mawile, Mr. Mime, Sylveon, Aromatisse, Klefki, and a Kirlia. I chose Aromatisse because Valerie is a fashion designer, so it would make sense for her to have a fashionable Pokemon like Aromatisse. Klefki because it could add to the playful aesthetic to Valerie's dollhouse-like gym. It could also be the keys to lock the doors to each room. And Kirlia because Valerie speaks fairy language, so I thought it'd be fitting for her to have a Pokemon that can speak the human language. And Kirlia is known to use telepathy to speak to humans. For Olympia, I think she would have a Sigilyph, Slowking, a male and female Meowstic, Xatu, and a Mega Medicham. I chose a male Meowstic to simply pair with Olympia's female Meowstic. Xatu because Olympia is known as a powerful psychic that can see into the future, so having a Pokemon that can do the same would be fitting. And Mega Medicham because the Anastar City Sundial is literally loaded with tons of Mega Energy, so I feel like Olympia would have easy access to Mega Evolving her Pokemon. And there are no other major characters that use a Mega Medicham on their team. And finally for the Kalos region, we have Wulfric, and I think his full team would be an Abomasnow, Cryogonal, Avalugg, Mamoswine, Delibird, and a Beartic. I chose Mamoswine because it is often used to travel in mountain paths with heavy snow. Delibird because Wulfric is the most Santa Claus-like gym leader there is, so he definitely needs a little helper like Delibird. And Beartic simply because it would have matching beards with Wulfric, and their names kind of sound alike. Next, we have the Alola region, and starting with Hala, I think his full team would be a Mankey, Makuhita, Crabrawler, Stuffle, Poliwag, and a Machop. I chose Stuffle because Hala is known to be a friendly grandpa, so him having a teddy bear Pokemon like Stuffle would be perfect. Poliwag because Hala has a Poliwrath in his Pokemon League team, and Machop just because it's a weak fighting type. For Olivia, I think she would have a Nosepass, Boldore, Lycanroc, Carbink, and 2 fossil Pokemon. Carbink because Olivia runs a jewelry store, so it would make sense for her to have a gemstone Pokemon. And 2 fossil Pokemon because at Olivia's jewelry store, she also sells fossils, so it would be reasonable for her to have a couple of them as well. For Nanu, I think you would have a Sableye, Krokorok, 2 Alolan Persian, Absol, and Alolan Raticate. Absol because Nanu as a police officer could utilize his ability to locate areas before a disaster strikes, since Absol are known to appear in disastrous areas. And Alolan Raticate because it shares the same character trait as Nanu, and that is being lazy. And finally for the Alola region, we have Hapu, and I think her full team would be an Alolan Dugtrio, Gastrodon, Flygon, Mudsdale, Golurk, and a Gumshoos. Golurk because Hapu has one on her remake team, and in the anime, it helps her around with her garden. And lastly, Gumshoos, because Hapu is from the ancient pony path, so possibly her starter Pokemon was a Yungoos, which spawns right next to her house, and it would have been handy for her to have on her farm, since Yungoos are known to prey on Rattata. Next, we have the Galar region, and starting with Milo, I think his full team would be Gossifleur, Eldegoss, Applin, Cherubi, Seanie, and an Oddish. I chose Applin because his Pokemon becomes Milo's Gigantamax Pokemon in his rematch team. Cherubi because Milo is a farmer, so he probably grows these Pokemon, if that's even a thing. Steenie because Milo is seen with the falling Tasserina in the Isle of Armor. And Oddish because Milo's signature catchphrase is that his Pokemon are as tough as weeds. And it so happens that Oddish is the weed Pokemon. For Nessa, I think she would have a Goldeen, Arrokuda, Dreadnought, Brionne, Wingull, and a Feebas. I chose Brionne because Nessa is a professional model, so it would make sense for Brionne, the pop star Pokemon, to be one of her aces. Wingull because Hulbury is a harbor with a lighthouse, so I feel like a ton of Wingull fly by on a daily basis. And Feebas because Nessa is seen riding on a Milotic in Pokemon Twilight Wings. For Kabu, I think he would have a Ninetales, Arcanine, Cinescorch, Karkle, Raboot, and a Torkoal. I chose Karkle because before battling Kabu in his gym, you could find him training with a Karkle in the Galar mines, so he has to have one. Raboot because Kabu looks like a soccer player, so I think a soccer-inspired Pokemon will be perfect for him. And Torkoal because Kabu is originally from the Hoenn region, so he should definitely have a Hoenn rep on his team. For B, I think she would have a Hitmontop, Pangoro, Surfetch, Machamp, Grapplock, and a Phalanx. I chose Grapplock simply because Bia has one on her rematch team and in the anime, and Ash even lost her a Grapplock during his first challenge. And Phalanx because she also has one in the anime, her rematch team, and even a trading card. For Alistair, I think she would have a Galarian Yamask, Mimikyu, Cursula, Gengar, Poltegeist, and a Trevenant. I chose Poltegeist because Alistair is shown having a Sinistea in the anime, and the item required to evolve Sinistea can be found in Stow-Inside, the same city Alistair's gym is at. And Trevenant because Stow-Inside is right next to Glimwood Tangle, a pretty eerie forest, so I'm sure Alistair would have been compelled to visit the forest and catch the spookiest Pokemon there, which would probably be a Phantom. For Opal, I think she would have a Galarian Weezing, Mawile, Togekiss, Alcremie, Grimmsnarl, and a Shiinotic. I chose Grimmsnarl because Opal's shawl looks like it was made out of Grimmsnarl's fur, so maybe she made it from her own Grimmsnarl's shredded fur. And Shiinotic because this Pokemon can be found in Glimwood Tangle, and Opal's gym is surrounded by glowing mushrooms, so she might as well have one on her team. For Gordy, I think you would have a Barbaracle, Shuckle, Stonejourner, Colossal, Crustle, and a Pupitar. I chose Crustle because in the non-snowy route leading to Sir Chester, there are wandering Crustles, so maybe Gordy caught one along the way. And Pupitar because there's a Tyranitar on Gordy's rematch team. For Melanie, I think she would have a Frostmoth, Galarian Darmanitan, Icecu, Lapras, Vanillux, and a Mr. Rime. I chose Vanillux because in Twilight Wings she is shown eating a banana split shake, so I gave her Vanillux just because of that, which might be a stretch. And Mr. Rime because Melly has a Mr. Rime on a rematch team and in the manga. For Piers, I think he would have a Scrafty, Malamar, Skuntank, Obstagoon, Umbreon, and a Toxtricity. I chose Umbreon because Piers is the first ever Dark-type gym leader, so I thought it would be fitting for him to have the first available Dark-type Pokemon, which is Umbreon in Gold and Silver. And Toxtricity purely because Piers is a musician. And finally for the Galar region, we have Hoenn, and I think his full team would be Gigalith, Flygon, Sandaconda, Duraludon, Tyranitar, and a Goodra. I chose Tyranitar because Hoenn's team is a Sandstorm team, so having another way to set up Sandstorm through Tyranitar's Sandstream ability would be beneficial for him. And lastly, Goodra because Hoenn has one in 2 anime series, and even in the manga. And finally, we have the Paldea region, and starting with Katie, I think your full team would be Nimble, Tarantula, Teddiursa, Vivillon, Combee, and a Pineco. I chose Vivillon because in a brief cutscene before you battle Katie, you can see her feeding a pastry to a Vivillon, so she probably has one on her team. Combee because as a pastry chef, Katie would probably want to have a steady supply of honey for baking. And Pineco because Katie has a fortress on a rematch team. For Brassius, I think you would have a Patillo, Smoliv, Sudowoodo, Bonsweet, Shroomish, and a Sunflora. I chose Bonsweet and Shroomish simply because both of their final stages are on Brassius' rematch team. And Sunflora because Brassius has several artworks called Serening Sunflora, and his gym challenge involves rounding up several Sunflora, so he probably has at least one of them in his full team. For Ayano, I think she would have a Watrill, Bellibolt, Luxio, Miss Magius, Magnemite, and a Voltorb. I chose Magnemite, or a future Paldea Magnemite, because, you guessed it, her hair clips look like Magnemite. And Voltorb because, again, Electro can be found in a rematch team. For Kofu, I think you have a Veluza, Wugtrio, Crabominable, Clauncher, Finizen, and a Tatsuguri. I chose Clauncher because, as a seafood chef, Kofu probably comes across a ton of Clauncher claws, and according to his dex entry, these claws are a delicacy. Finizen because Kofu loves to go out for auctions, and in the surrounding area, a ton of Finizen can be found. And Tatsuguri due to it literally being a piece of sushi, so it would fit well for a seafood chef like Kofu. For Larry, I think you would have a Komola, Dundunspars, Staraptor, Oinkologne, Greedent, and a Rufflet. I chose Oinkologne because Larry's gym is a restaurant, so maybe he came across one before it was going to get slaughtered and decided to save it. Greeted because, again, Larry's Gym is a restaurant, and also because it can be seen as a wallpaper in the background. And Rufflet because Bravery is on Larry's rematch team. For Rhyme, I think she would have a Banette, Mimikyu, Houndstone, Toxtricity, Frostlass, and a Spiritomb. I chose Frostlass because Rhyme's gym is located in the town in the middle of a mountain, so it's likely that Snorunt and Frostlass are lurking around. And Spiritomb because it can also be found on the same mountain. For Tulip, I think she would have a Farrakharaf, Gardevoir, Espathra, Florges, Gothitelle, and a Gallade. I chose Gothitelle because it looks like it wears makeup, and Tulip being a makeup artist would probably find it useful to practice her makeup on. And Gallade because it would pair nicely with her Gardevoir, and give her more type diversity. And finally for the Paldea region, we have Grusha, and I think his full team would be Frostmoth, Beartick, Psytitan, Altaria, Weavile, and Abomasnow. I chose Weavile because it looks like a kind of Pokemon that a brooding snowbird like Grusha would have. And lastly, Abomasnow, simply because it can be found in the surrounding area. And its Snow Warning ability would be a great buff for Grusha's Ice-type team. And there you go, that is every gym leader's full Pokemon team if they had one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, you should check out my 1 fact for every gym leader video. I go over every gym leader in the games and anime, so click on the end card right here. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell.